Wild rice is a sacred food to Ojibwe people. It was given to the Anishinaabe people from the Creator. They were told to migrate from the northeastern part of North America and to go where the food floats on water.
Researchers at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and tribes and intertribal organizations across the Upper Great Lakes region came together to form a collaborative project to study and protect wild rice, or Manoomin in Ojibwe and Pasing in Dakota.
It's all the project name is appropriate for how wild rice is being honored and handled. The Kawe Gidaa-naanaagadawendaamin Manoomin, which means first we must consider Manoomin. And I just think it's a really fitting name for the project and how the U of M team works with these tribal partners.
Tribes are sovereign nations and they have distinct worldviews and traditions. And then those are backed by rich cultural teachings that are passed down from one generation to the next. But since colonial times, they've had to defend their ways against encroachment by Western worldviews and environmental degradation. And so we have this need to protect and have control over, their own data. And so that's what we call data sovereignty. And then any collaborative research effort between a tribe and an outside entity, whether that's a university or a government, should support tribal sovereignty. It's really just learning about the best practices to protect sensitive data, work with Indigenous partners to formalize agreements like we have, MOUs and those sorts of things on data ownership and sharing. And then I've really appreciated the U of M's practice. It's better to kind of over ask rather than to under ask, and so I love that the U of M researchers are constantly approaching tribal members and tribal biologists and saying, can we use this information? Are you okay with being added to this?
Yeah, addressing past and present harms has been something that our project has focused on a lot, and it's really helped us build strong partnerships with tribes. In order to acknowledge past and present harms, we put the tribes first. Research in this case, as it should be, is in service to others. In our project, our research is in service to the tribes, recognizing that in the past, the university has not always served the tribes well or respected tribal sovereignty. One of the past and present harms that we're dealing with at the University of Minnesota is a long legacy of the university doing research with wild rice, with Manoomin, without the consent or even knowledge in many cases of the tribal communities.
There's this deep-rooted and multi-generational mistrust of universities within tribal communities. And that's reaffirmed every time they're ignored or disenfranchised or subject to false premises. And that researchers coming in, if they don't take the time to understand the specifics of those past harms, they can perpetuate them. And so one of the things I've really appreciated with this collaboration is that, really from the outset, that collaboration to come together, to have a meeting, to listen to tribal elders, listen across reservations, across tribal communities, and just kind of hear what their experiences were and what the pain was about that. And that, I think that needs to happen before anything else.
One of the ways we do this is literally paying people for their time. Like, we are all paid as university employees, as grad students, et cetera, paid to work on this project. We make sure that our grants have funding in them, our proposals, and they have gotten funded, has funds for the tribes themselves, again, to meet their goals. Also respect the intellectual labor of our tribal partners by including them in the entire research process, the entire research cycle. That includes, what questions do we ask? What are techniques that we can use to answer those questions? How do we compile the information that we learn, the writing papers together, having people as co-authors, meaningful co-authors. And then how do we disseminate that aside from scientific papers?
Well, this project has done a great job at taking a step back and really developing relationships and trust with tribal staff. A lot of times researchers tend to want to push forward the project and at the last minute want kind of sign-ons or buy-in from tribes. That's really not how it should work. These projects should be developed cooperatively up front, and this project's done a great job of kind of resetting and doing things a good way. And again, I think the real value has been building those relationships and that trust.
The number one thing is to listen. A lot of times, seems like people just kind of want to jump in with their ideas and what they think. But I think just the first part is just to listen to what the tribal partners have to say about what is going on with their wild rice.
Yeah, I think that it's really, really easy for people to use a formal document as a checklist. We have the documentation. I can show you the file. I can show you that everyone signed off on it. So it's good. We're doing research the way we're supposed to, right? And but that's not what a relationship is. I think it's really, really important that in this project we've signed MOUs, because I think that act was a signal of the fact that we're taking this seriously, but it only matters. Our actions are what actually matters.
Beyond that, the professionalism, I guess you'd want to say, or academic type of relationship. It's beyond that. It's kind of become more personal. To me, we've built a solid foundation for long-term collaboration and long-term lifetime relationships.
I think one really important constraint on partnerships to understand and to anticipate for university faculty are institutional constraints. And those can be in the form of, say, the grant cycle of your typical grants that you receive, at a research university. They don't necessarily allow the time that's needed to build really strong relationships, to get out and meet partners on their time, on their schedules.
The project itself is tied to a sacred plant that is important to local Indigenous tribes. So I feel like that alone should have you should have people working on it with a direct connection to it, which is also why I was grateful to be allowed onto the project.
Through this project and just like other personal learning of mine, I'm really starting to realize how much value there is in different ways of knowing, and that those different ways of knowing can be incorporated into research, into science. That not only shows a lot of respect and helps to deepen our relationships, that also improves the science that we're doing.
In science, the Western science and traditional philosophy, around science, what they call, TEK, is, I don't think you can have one without the other. Part of this project, that with the partnership that we have, not just with Lac du Flambeau, but some of the other tribes, I think that's one of the things of how do we bring these two together. That's what it's about, is sharing those findings, being a part of that, being able to experience that together, being able to experience the overall broader picture of being on the landscape and beyond. It leads to other things, other than what we set out to to research. So I mean, so we this project's made an impact I don't even think we realize.